Thank you for showing up for our programs sponsored by the Timbercrest Seniors for Peace Steering Committee, which almost all of us are here. And Jim Smith is no stranger. He wears many hats here in our community, and he's going to begin now and just talk to us, and then we have a chance to talk to him.
Good morning. I'm not sure how, I'm going to come closer to you if that's all right. I'm not sure how much I need a microphone. I have been known to have a gymnasium voice. And can you hear me, Mary?
Yeah, but we need the phone. I think we need the microphone.
Yes, right. That's what I'm using, and I will continue to use it, yeah. But, so, I was asked to come to talk about how the town of North Manchester works to prevent violence. And I have been a member of the North Manchester Town Council since 2008. I retired from my profession in public education at the end of 2007, December 31st of 2007. And 6 months before that, we had moved back to North Manchester. We spent 14 years here between 84 and 98, and then left for a job opportunity, and we're gone for almost 10 years, but moved back, and we'd been in town. We'd been back here for 6 months before I retired, but there was an opening. I'm sure many of you know Stan Escott. Stan was on the town council for many years. He had decided not to run. There was an election in 2007. He had decided not to run, and but no one else ran either. So the law says that if that happens, then the person who has the office then keeps the office. They can't refuse it until either there's another election or they resign. And so Stan resigned his position in January of 2008, and there was a meeting. The way that works, many of you probably know, there was a meeting of all of the precinct committeemen, precinct committee persons, and there were a couple of us who were interested, and that's when I was first elected. And so I'm will be finishing my 19th year on the town council at the end of this year. I have some handouts that I want to give you and go through with you. I think I'm going to get a little help here doing that. Thank you. I was asked if I wanted to use a PowerPoint, and many times I do use a PowerPoint, but also many times technology doesn't work the way you want it to, and I would just have simply had what I'm handing you. I would have had that in the PowerPoint, so I might as well just make a copy of it and give it to you. I'm going to walk through this information with you. Some of it I'm going to read, some of it I'm going to mention, and then I might say another couple of things about some of the information. If you have any questions, I would appreciate it if you would wait until I'm finished to ask those questions, because one of the big reasons is, you ask a question at this point, it may be covered later in the presentation. So I will appreciate that, but there will be an opportunity for you to ask me questions, and hopefully I can answer them. The first point I want to make is that North Manchester has very few instances of violence or threatened violence in our community. Over the last 40 years, there have been 3 deaths other than suicides or accidents in North Manchester by gun violence. There was one police-involved situation when an individual started shooting at an officer and the officer returned fire and killed the individual. There was a murder of an ex-husband by an ex-wife in the ex-husband's driveway a few years ago. And many years ago, there was a murder of an attorney by an ex-husband when that attorney had represented the ex-wife. Those last 2 were, you might call those crimes of passion, but those are the only 3 actual gun violence situations that resulted in death, except for suicides and accidental. Many people wonder about what the town could do to limit guns or to limit gun violence by regulating guns. And there are strict limits as far as what we can and cannot do. And there's a Indiana code, a law from the state, firearm preemption statute, which prohibits local governments from regulating firearms, ammunition, firearm accessories, ownership, possession, carrying, transportation, registration, transfer, storage, commerce in firearms, meaning stores or someplace that would sell firearms, and taxation of firearms. Now, the state does some regulation, but the town cannot do anything on its own and do stricter ordinances or laws than the state already has. And as I say here, we cannot pass our own gun control ordinances. There are additional state restrictions. It also prohibits local governments from running a gun buyback program. I don't know whether you've heard of those, but there are places where the unit of government might say, okay, if you want to turn in your gun, we'll pay you $200 to turn in your gun. But the state could do that. The state does not have a program like that. The state could do that, but the town cannot have its own buyback program. There are things, if you turn the page, the back side, I saved paper by doing front and back. Indiana law does allow a few narrow areas of local control. There can be no firearms if the town, there can be no firearms in buildings containing courtrooms. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that because I don't know how many of you ever, if any, have ever gone to the courthouse to vote. But when you go to the courthouse to vote, or if you go to the courthouse to the clerk's office or to one of the courts, you have to pass through a metal detector to do that. But when you go to vote, you don't. There are two courts in that building, as well as the clerk's office, as well as probation, and so forth. But and the county could say that if you're coming to vote, you still have to go through the metal detector, and you can't bring a firearm into the voting place. But they choose not to. They choose not to do that, and Bev Eikenberry and I actually met with the county clerk a couple of years ago to try to say, why don't you have voting locations where firearms are already prohibited, churches, places like that, and it didn't change anything. I'm getting a little static, aren't I? It didn't change anything, but their attorneys, she told us that their attorneys have advised them that they cannot prohibit firearms in that voting place. And so when you go in to vote, you don't go through the metal detector. You go, if you say, I'm only here to vote, and there's a separate entrance, if you've been there, there's a separate entrance into the voting booth. Firearms in county hospitals. Firearms at events on government-leased property, if the event organizers impose those rules. Zoning rules that apply equally to all businesses, not just gun stores. And employer rules for employees while on duty, but employees may store guns in locked vehicles. Those are all kind of iffy allowances, but they are there. In 2025, the only documented violence-related incident in North Manchester was a workplace threat, and underscore the word threat. It did not end up being any kind of violence. Nobody was hurt. Nobody drew a gun. Nobody was hurt. But it was at OJ Intertech, which is south of town. It's a manufacturing plant south of town. It was on September 16th of 2025. But there were no shootings, stabbings, or confirmed assaults in 2025. In North Manchester, almost all incidents that could lead to violence are domestic related. My opinion, changes in society have driven an overall increase in domestic violence, as well as violent reactions in general. In North Manchester in 2025, we had domestic incidents where the police got involved at the rate of 2.5 a month. That's an average, obviously. You don't have a half an incident. So there was 2.5, and in 2026 so far we've had 2, one in January and one in February. I don't know about March yet because we don't see those statistics until the first Wednesday of the month, so I won't see those until next Wednesday. Our daughter was a police officer in Evansville for 25 years, and she has told me, well, as a matter of fact, there were times when I rode along with her. Not very many, but there were a few times that I rode along with her and she always worked nights. Anyway, I remember one time when she and 2 other officers responded to a domestic violence situation. I was instructed, and I paid attention, to stay in the car, because they can get violent. And they can get violent against anyone. Anyway, but I was able to observe from the car how the officers reacted and what they did. And our daughter Sarah, she said that this was what she always does in those situations. She got the children who were there. There were children there who were watching everything, seeing everything, had seen what had happened that caused the police to be called. The children may have even called the police. But our daughter, that was her job. Her job was to interact with whatever children were there, try to keep them calm, try to explain to them what was going on, try to talk with them, try to have them talk with her. So I thought that was a nice thing to do, a good thing to do. So I want to tell you another, doesn't have anything to do with the violence really, but another story that I remember from riding with her. She was one night, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. She was working through a government grant, I think a federal grant, to try to watch for people who were intoxicated and driving. And so we were touring around, and she would stop at a bar and watch as people came out to see what they were doing. And there were 2 guys who got in a van, and they started out from the parking lot, and they started the wrong way down a one-way street. And so that gave her opportunities to stop them and see what was going on. Well, the driver of the vehicle was obviously intoxicated, and the other guy was passed out in the back of the van. So he was obviously under the influence also. So she arrested, the one guy for driving under the influence, arrested the other guy for public intoxication. We went to the police station, and she had to do what she called intake, which was the interview. And the two guys were sitting there, and the guy who had been in the back of the van was constantly falling asleep while he was in that room. And so she allowed me to come in and observe that. And so I was sitting there, and about every minute or so, the man who was falling asleep would wake up, and he'd look over at Sarah, and he'd look at me, and he'd say, "Who are you?" I didn't respond. And about the third time that he did that, about the third time he looked at me and said, "Who are you?" He said, "I know who you are. You're her father." He said, "Are you going to allow her to treat me this way?" Made a memory. Domestic incidents response. This is the way that our local police department responds to domestic incidents that they are called to. If it's only a verbal altercation, if they're only yelling at each other, or it has not gotten physical, then they separate the disputants and de-escalate by talking through the history and talking through the situation. They just try to calm them down and talk through what's going on and try to get them to agree that things are not going to go any further. We're okay, that kind of thing. If it has become physical, then they determine the extent of how much it has become physical. Has someone shoved someone and nobody was hurt? Has someone hit someone and they have a bruise, or they have a more extensive injuries? There have not been any instances that the chief has told me about, and I'm sure he would have told me, where a gun was involved in any of those domestic situations. The ultimate, of course, is to arrest whoever it was that was physical with the other individual, and sometimes that could be either party, the male or the female can get physical with the other one. But the ultimate would be to arrest the perpetrator and charge them with domestic violence. And they would make a judgment call on that, depending on what the attitude was, depending on how much they could talk to them and try to de-escalate the situation, and that sort of thing. And many times, the person that is the recipient of the violence does not want the perpetrator arrested, and might even change their story and might say, "Oh no, he or she did not hit me. He or she did not shove me. I said that out of anger, and so no, don't arrest him. Don't arrest her." So the next page tells a little more in detail how the police respond. It's kind of a standard operating procedure of how police respond to domestic incidents. And they are trained in de-escalation. All police officers attend the Indiana Police Academy, and the police academy does train officers on de-escalating situations. And those de-escalation tactics are used whenever it is possible. I mean, you could run into situations where it's just gotten to the point where you can't de-escalate it. You're going to have to arrest the perpetrator and take care of it that way. But if they can work with it, this is how they do it. And I'm going to read this to you. And this is directly from Chief Nate Burge. "Most times we get called and can get there before it gets physical. I can separate the two. Ideally, we would want people to be able to talk through most situations with even yelling and screaming and maybe throwing things. The next best situation is when we get there before it's, when we get there before it's physical. The last type is it gets physical, and if it's domestic, the state says we shall arrest if it's someone hurting somebody else. Very few instances where we don't arrest if it's become a physical situation. When we get there and one party or both are still amped up, his words, and that is when we would have to de-escalate. Most times, if there are multiple officers, separating the two parties helps the most. If there's just one officer, that can be tricky. And in a town the size of North Manchester, multiple officers responding is not something that is all the time, because sometimes there is only one officer on duty, and so that one officer has to handle it. If it gets to the point where the officer needs, as you have heard before, backup, then they can call, and somebody who's not on duty can come and help. The officer might have to use two different adjacent rooms and look through the doorway to keep eyes on both parties. Most times people are not mad at us, meaning the police. They are mad at each other, and if they can't see each other, in other words, if they're in two different rooms, if they can't see each other, tensions seem to lift. However, they can still hear each other. This is when we must act as advocates and promise each side that they get to tell their side of the story. I don't know how many of you might be involved or might be aware of mediation, education for conflict resolution, and their mediation techniques. I was a mediator for them for 10 years, and this sounds a lot like what mediation does. So I'm sure that they're taught that in the police academy. Sometimes just our presence is enough to calm people down to where they can talk. We try to get one party to leave for a time and have a cooling off period, not necessarily leave and go, drive a car or whatever, but might take a walk, something like that. Sometimes this doesn't work because no one wants to leave. If our presence and talking doesn't work and someone is still being aggressive, then sometimes the officer could choose to at least draw his taser and turn it on. Sometimes just the red dot and display of the taser will bring people back down to talking. Sometimes it backfires, and either the taser is deployed or we do have to go hands-on, which is not what anyone wants. However, we must react to what the situation is giving us. And it's always, the question always is, are they a danger to themselves or others? And if they are going to be a danger to themselves or others, then they have to be restrained. Some of the de-escalation, if the person is not hurting themselves or others and just yelling, sometimes all they want is to be heard, and we listen or walk with them, get them to take deep breaths and let that anger out. So I think that's important that the officers, when they respond to a domestic situation, and really any situation, if that includes the potential for violence, they're going to try to talk it down. They're going to try to calm it down. They're going to try to other ways other than just simply, turning the person around and putting handcuffs on them. Other potentially violent situations occur when a person is under the influence of alcohol or narcotics and displays violent tendencies. Sometimes an officer must use physical force to subdue the individual, and usually that person goes to jail. Someone who's under the influence of alcohol or some kind of a narcotic is not going to be rational most of the time, and so therefore they have to be restrained. And many times, and obviously, like I told the story about Sarah and the guy in the back of the van, there are laws that are being broken. Public intoxication or even under the influence of narcotics is against the law, and it endangers that person. It endangers others. So I do have a little more information, not about North Manchester directly, although it is a little bit about North Manchester directly, but at this point, I'll take any questions you have about what I've already talked about, or if it's something else, you know, I'm happy to listen and to try to respond. I need to,
Excuse me. Are suicides staying pretty level, or are they kind of going up in these?
I'm sorry.
Are suicides on kind of a level more or less, or are there more suicides going up now?
Not in our community. Suicides are a rare thing in our community, and they're not, as far as I know, I've not heard anything about them escalating or de-escalating for that matter. Joanne?
I'm wondering if the college has a no guns rule, and if that's legal.
I don't know that. I don't
Okay,
know
how
that.
about the schools?
Yes, the schools by law have
By
a
law,
no,
good.
matter of fact, it's a no weapons. No weapons. And you know, back when I was at Manchester High School and Joyce and Jane Ann were both there at the same time, we had guys who were into hunting, and they would drive in the parking lot and park with a rifle in the back of their truck and on a hanger, and nobody thought about it. Nobody thought, and I mean, this was back in the 80s and 90s, and nobody was concerned about it because they knew why it was there. But today, that you can't have it on school property. Now, I can't imagine that the university doesn't have that same kind of a rule, but I don't know that. Oh.
I'm wondering, at the bottom of the first page, a local government can't sponsor a buyback program. Can nonprofit organizations sponsor those publicly?
Are you asking me if a non-governmental group or
Non-governmental
agency
group.
could do that? Yes, they
Yeah.
can. I believe that you've heard of, and I have too, a program where there's some kind of a machine or something that can come into town and can take guns and can destroy them. And now whether they pay for that, I don't know, and some might and some might not. But what that actually says is that no tax money can be used to buy those guns.
Okay. The rule about no weapons in school, does that include pocket knives?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding you.
The rule about no weapons in school, does that include pocket knives, or is there a length of a knife that is prohibited?
I think it's true that pocket knives and that kind of thing might not be prohibited. I don't. It's been a long time since I've been involved in making rules for schools, and so I don't really know. But you could go online. I believe the student handbook is on the Manchester Community Schools website, and you could go online and look at that, and that would tell you the exact wording. Got one back there.
Is there a legal definition to domestic situation?
There is. I don't have it in front of me, but there is a legal definition, and I think the legal definition speaks mostly to when it crosses the line to being a legal offense. Yeah.
Any others?
I think I've heard at some time that domestic violence can be some of the most challenging, dangerous, a whole lot of things, that they're really sticky things to deal with, and for a police officer or anybody to get involved in it can be you better have some training or something to be able to do that.
Exactly, exactly. That's right. I worked for 10 years in the CASA program in Wabash County. And for that entire 10 years, I worked with the same 3 children. And they were 2 brothers and a sister. And they were removed from the home because they witnessed the mother beat up on the father. And the children called the county sheriff. They lived out in the country. They called the county sheriff, and that started everything. And it ended up that the parents, there was a termination of parental rights hearing, and the parental rights of the parents were taken away. Now, it wasn't only, the parental rights were not taken away only because of the fact that there was a domestic violence situation. They were also taken away because the parents would not cooperate with what the court ordered as far as counseling and that kind of thing. So I remember the mother saying to me at one point in time when I was talking to her about, why aren't you implementing those things that the counselor tells you should implement? Well, that's just not the way we do things. Anyone else? Okay, if you look at the last page, I just thought you would be interested in the town's responsibilities regarding if we ever have ICE agents who come to North Manchester to look for what they look for. And so the town does not have a jail. And if the town police officers arrest somebody, they go to the Wabash County Jail. And so at that point in time, the custody and the administration of that individual is turned over to the county sheriff. And so the county sheriff is the one who decides whether ICE needs to be contacted, and the town and the town's representatives don't have anything to say about that. If I could just go down through this, federal law does not dictate that local law enforcement must cooperate with ICE. However, there is a state law that was just passed this last legislative session that makes Indiana one of the strictest states in the country regarding mandatory ICE cooperation. For North Manchester and Wabash County, the law is straightforward. If someone in custody has an ICE detainer, now an ICE detainer is something that ICE creates, Customs creates, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They create a detainer, and they put a person, they are supposed to have probable cause, they're supposed to have strong suspicion somebody maybe has already been convicted of a crime. They put that person's name in a database. And if that person is arrested by, let's say the person is arrested by the North Manchester Police Department for whatever reason, and they are in the Wabash County Jail, then the state law says that the sheriff must consult that list. And if that person is on that list, then the sheriff has to notify ICE that they have that person, and they have to, if ICE wants them to detain that person for 2 days longer than they normally would, they have to comply with that. And that's, I'm assuming that's so that the ICE folks can come and get the person and have time to do that. So, but the town of North Manchester and the representatives of the town of North Manchester don't have any say in any of that. That's entirely because of the fact that we don't have a jail and we don't detain people ourselves. They go to the county, and the county takes over the administration of that person. That law also eliminates the possibility of becoming a sanctuary city or town. if it was proposed, or if the town council wanted to determine that North Manchester should be a sanctuary town, the law says we can't do that. So I just thought that might be interesting information for you. I wasn't, until I researched this, I wasn't really aware of the detainer list. And that's the way they identify who, which detainees they need to notify ICE regarding. Anything else I can help you with?
It was a year or so ago when, well, it ended up with the restaurant going in town and all that. And so the fellow was taken away. I'm not sure if he ever was deported, but then that left the woman and the family here. And I was just wondering, is there an update or how that thing all, because we used to go to that restaurant a lot, and we were on our tandem bike, and happened in right about the time that it all was going on, and got to talk with her, and even lined up her to talk to an attorney in Warsaw, and so it just was, we have a lot of interest in how that is now and how that all got taken care of.
I'm totally not aware.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if I understand you correctly, somebody help me with that. What is he talking about?
The Country Family Restaurant.
Uh-huh.
The person, the owner, cook, whatever, was detained not here in town.
Yeah. My understanding, yes, I do know about that.
Okay, that's-
My understanding is that he had gone to an immigration hearing, like many others that we hear about, and that he was detained at that immigration hearing. So that was not here.
We know that, but we don't know where he is now.
No.
What happened to the family.
No. And you know, I don't know whether it was his wife or his children or whoever, the relatives who were running the restaurant, they just closed the doors. It's getting ready to be reopened though.
El Mesquite is going to do something
Yeah.
with that spot.
Yeah, although it's going to be not necessarily tacos.
No. Well, thank you so much, Jim. This was a whole lot of good information, and we hope that we'd have twice as many people here to learn about it. We'll put your papers out so that those,
I'm happy to leave you with the rest of these
That would be good.
if someone,
you have an extra. Yeah, that's all right.
if
We'll put
someone
them out.
who
We'll put them
heard
out.
us,
Take them along or share them or whatever. So people need to be
if someone
aware
who
that
heard
these-
us would like to have
this-
the information, why,
This is a good record for this community, and
Yeah.
we want to thank you for your part of it.
well,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you for inviting me.